So for what reason is potassium the most significant electrolyte? That is the issue for. Let's just take a look at this today. 4 fundamental electrolytes we have K in addition to, which is the compound image. For potassium, we want 700 milligrams then, at that point, we have sodium, which is a good thing. 1,500 to 2,300 milligrams. Then we have calcium Ca. We really want 1,000 milligrams. And the magnesium to be able, we only need 420 milligrams. See that? We really want 10-fold the amount potassium than magnesium, and so on. Potassium, we require twice as much sodium. Also, with calcium, we really want multiple times as. Why do we require so much potassium? Well, above all else, what is an electrolyte? Electrolyte is an electrically charged mineral. When you take an electrolyte and you put it in water, it isolates and becomes conductive to power. So our electrolytes are used by the body for many things. 2. Assist with leading nerve driving forces to help you contract and loosen up. Muscles to aid in maintaining the body's pH and to assist with pushing liquid through the body. 30% of the total energy in our body comes from a tiny pump known as the potassium-sodium pump, but I have to say that the definition for siphon is somewhat not quite the same as the siphon that you presumably have down in your cellar as the sump. Siphon, this is an organic. It refers to the mechanism for development of electrolytes through the cell layer. Okay, so that is a bit unique in relation to simply a siphon pushing liquid someplace. So 30 of all the energy that you possess, whether digesting or thinking and so on, about 1/3 of all the energy comes from the sodium-potassium pump. So what this is for, siphon is to essentially keep sodium out and keep potassium in. So it's keeping these two minerals isolated. Okay, that is the reason for this siphon. Whenever you have two distinct minerals which are electrically charged, another way, okay, you build a battery. So with a battery, you have a positive, whereas a negative is that there is a difference in this electrical charge. And that permits for energy to be kept up with. For the reason for this siphon is to keep up with energy for your cells, so they can basically batteries. What's more, the battery is there to help stimulate the nerves, which end up being associated with muscles. So it's enacting the muscles. You have electrical driving forces that are, in fact, changing the muscle mood. Then we really want energy to have the muscles contract and unwind and assist with controlling the pH of the body. And one of its purposes is to allow proteins to turn out. So, for instance, there are certain compounds that really work in various pHs. So, assuming that your stomach-related framework is some unacceptable pH, that compound won't work. We should take the stomach, for instance. Has this extremely effective protein compound called peptase, right? And that compound is enacted when the stomach arrives at a specific pH level. If that pH level is never reached by the stomach, then the enzyme never transforms actuated, and afterward, you don't process protein. So the pH is incredibly significant. Furthermore, the stomach is enormously subject to potassium for its pH and its capacity to process protein good. And afterward we have liquid balance. On the off chance that you need something more potassium, think about what your lower legs are going to balloon with liquid. At times when you see people walking around in sandals, have these spaces around the shoes where they have this puffy liquid, and I simply need to approach them also. Let them know. Simply take some potassium. All that liquid will totally disappear, most likely within the next few hours. But I to prevent myself from acting that way, since once in a while individuals think about that inconsiderate. Okay? So how does potassium respond? Well, it keeps us lively, okay? It gives us perseverance. At the point when we practice, assuming you're low in potassium, you cannot go as far when you work out. It additionally forestalls squeezing, like the cramps that you get in your calves or your feet right now. And it might also be magnesium. 2. Likewise, potassium is important to forestall arrhythmias. Alright, which is part of your heart's pacemaker. It additionally forestalls jerking, tremors, blockage. Since you have this, it's called peristalsis. This siphoning activity through your colon, which is controlled by the sensory system and the solid framework. So without potassium, you don't help this siphoning activity through the colon, and things only sort of stay there. Likewise, potassium is important to forestall vascular calcification. Therefore, the requirement for potassium in the guideline of calcium. Now, without potassium you get sleep deprivation. You can't rest. So potassium is a physiological sedative. It loosens up the body a lot, like magnesium truly does. So we should simply say, for instance, you're lacking in potassium for reasons unknown. You're going to lay there on the pad and attempt to achieve sleep. But your heart will be beating faster. You will feel your muscles more tense. You won't have the option to get into that state of relaxation. Fine. The next thing is insulin opposition. I have a ton of videos about this. Potassium is necessary for insulin resistance opposition. As a matter of fact, in the event that you take a diabetic or a pre-diabetic or somebody with insulin obstruction, they're consistently lacking in potassium. So potassium will help your blood sugars. It will help decrease this insulin opposition, and insulin in the cell permits certain nutrients to enter and fuel to ensure whatever hinders this insulin function stops the ingestion of supplements and fuel into the cells, making this merely another motivation behind why potassium is significant in blood sugars. Now you too have so-called stored glucose glycogens, a line of glucose particles which likewise have with it a line of potassium atoms. So in request for glucose to be put away in the liver as well as the muscle, you require potassium, and you won't be able to. Glycogen is not as well stored. So if you don't store glycogen, the body then begins putting away more fat rather than accumulated sugar. And potassium is engaged with the variety of viewpoints of your blood sugars. When you go on the ketogenic diet, the necessity for this glycogen goes down, so you won't have to store as much glycogen. Exactly the same thing goes with when you do discontinuous fasting to avoid eating in order to. Body is then running on ketones. So because you are not running on glucose, try not to require as a lot of this. So this sort of disappears. So you're essentially consuming it, and it's not supplanted as much, particularly in your liver, after around 1 to 2 days. Thus, what happens is you will lose a part of glycogen glucose. Furthermore, you're likewise going to lose potassium. This is the reason when you start on the ketogenic diet, you really want to take I always suggest taking a potassium supplement. 1 in electrolytes. So you have all of them, not simply potassium. Good. The next thing that potassium does is it helps keep blood pressure down. If somebody has hypertension, the simplest thing to do is to increment their bodies, and the potassium generally will descend. The other reason of hypertension is low vitamin D, and afterward, a great deal of times individuals say, well, stand by a subsequent. I thought high blood pressure was brought about by high sodium. Okay, because you need sodium and potassium in the right proportions. Therefore, rather than lowering sodium by the manner in which you really want a specific measure of sodium, for a ton of motivations behind, what difference would it make? Increment potassium. Since, yes, you may have an excess of sodium, yet in actuality, you simply need more potassium to bargain with that sodium. So these individuals that are salt touchy for the most part are simply potassium lacking. Okay, and another normal fantasy that I've heard is that you would rather not take potassium since it's exceptionally harmful to the kidney. That is, in fact, false information. Potassium safeguards your kidneys, except if you have stage 5 kidney disappointment, in which case you need to stay away from many supplements. Yet, in the event that you don't have end-stage kidney disappointment, potassium is really helpful for the kidneys, and I will put a connect down beneath for those individuals who have not heard that data previously. Potassium citrate, as a matter of fact, is great for forestalling kidney stones. It's additionally great to forestall gout, which is uric corrosive gems. So potassium is quite generally excellent for a ton of various things presently. I previously referenced this. It forestalls edema, alright? Enlarging. Assuming you have expanding most of the time, you have an imbalance of much sodium and insufficient potassium. At the point when you take adequate potassium, it resembles a diuretic. In the event that you have liquid maintenance, you will dispose of that abundance liquid good. I as of now mentioned that potassium works against sodium toxicity. Likewise, I previously referenced that it makes a difference. You make stomach corrosive, and I moreover referenced it forestalls gout. Since potassium citrate is basic, and on the off chance that you keep the pH correct, and prevent your pH from turn out to be too acidic, you will not have these uric corrosive precious stones emerging from arrangement, exasperating your huge toe joint. Okay, so presently, the question is the reason. Are we lacking in potassium? Well, the main explanation is in light of the eating regimen. The typical individual just consumes about a cup and a portion of vegetables each and every day. Okay, a cup. Furthermore, a half. Well, where in food would you get a ton of rich potassium? Bananas. Right. Well, in a banana, it's just 300 milligrams, which amounts to 700 milligrams. In the event that we crunch the numbers, you would require 15.6 bananas each day to come to your 4700 is now required. The issue with bananas is they come with an excess of sugar, so bananas are not the ideal resource. The ideal resource would be salad greens. Alright, however, yes, you would require something like 7 to 10 cups to contribute to this sum. Yet, acknowledge. Additionally, other food will contribute, so it's not simply the serving of mixed greens. There's even potassium in certain things, like salmon, for instance. Also, there's potassium in nuts and seeds. What's more, nut margarines, as there's other wellsprings of potassium. However, the verdant greens contain a lot, and it's genuinely simple to eat large servings of mixed greens now. At the point, when I say 1 cup, I'm discussing, like, a little modest bunch, which is like 1 ounce, which is equivalent to a bowl of salad. You could do 1 for your lunch, and afterward you can do 1 for your supper. To make it truly simple, however, I did a video on showing you the sum, so I will put that connection down underneath presently. Avocados are stacked with potassium. 1 avocado has about 700 calories. Some of the time, 800 milligrams of potassium. So avocados are great. Now, I don't suggest going out and getting a supplement with potassium, unless there is a lot more potassium like in electrolyte powder, in light of the fact that ordinarily the supplements for potassium just come in 99 milligrams. Okay, so you would require like, what? 47 pills each and every day. And that is not extremely down to earth. So I suggest you attempt as much as you able to consume it, or obtain a great electrolyte powder that has enough of these electrolytes. Number 2, in the event that if you vomit, you will lose your potassium. Can help with diarrhea. Lose your potassium. Diuretics are known for transforming into potassium deficient sort of wild. You are using this drug to get high circulatory strain when that will eat away at your potassium and make an increase in blood pressure. Doesn't sound good to me. Alright, pressure at the point. When you have pressure, you drain your potassium holds. And by the way, when you really take potassium, unwinds your sensory system. It hauls you out of this pressure state. Sugar drains your potassium genuine fast. I need to recount to this story my significant other and I, years ago, just before we were preparing to wed, we went to look for a wedding venue. Cakes, okay. Furthermore, we were inspecting wedding cakes and were eating sugar the entire day. This is before I had any mindfulness on healthy foods, so we ended up eating that night at an Italian cafe, and we had pizza, pasta, bread, and wine. We were precisely carved out, and then when I looked up, they were all gone in the cafe aside from us, and they were. But another person was going past us with the treat plate, all the various treats they were in reality going to throw them, and he wanted to find out whether we needed to test some prior to he thrown them, and obviously it could do without to see food go to squander. So I began to make a plunge and began consuming however much extra treat that I can pack into my mouth. Now, as I was driving home that evening, I recollect I feeling sort of bizarre, so I returned home. I fell asleep, attempted to hit the sack, and I began to hear this pounding, like a boom, in my ear. Blast, blast, what is happening? I had no clue about. That was a serious potassium inadequacy brought about by consuming a great deal of refined grains and sugar. Alright, so this refined grain and sugar, in a real sense, exhausts you of potassium and begins to speed up the pulse. My pulse was, in a real sense, going, so my heart was pounding hard up there. Chest. Alright, I didn't rest one moment. If I would have understood what I know presently back then, I would have simply taken a few potassium or a substantial salad to attempt to replenish some of the potassium that was lost. Ideal illustration of low potassium. Alright, when you do keto, you really want to take potassium, since you will lose liquid, which you will then lose potassium. When you drink liquor, you can exhaust your assemblage of potassium at the point when you consume unreasonable liquids, so certain individuals drink gallons of liquid while they are sweating profusely as they exercise as well. And they're losing not simply their sodium electrolyte, they're likewise losing their potassium. So they're going to turn out to be extremely dried out and feel unsteady and fragile. So when you consume large amounts of water to drink your electrolytes at a similar time, however, not simply potassium, sodium as well. Furthermore, reference this perspiring here. Satisfactory diabetics need or require more potassium, and they are frequently lacking in potassium as a result of insulin opposition thing, so potassium is extremely significant for diabetics in particular. However, they are merely retaining sodium like insane in liquid without the potassium. Okay, now we have to fast. The issue with fasting is now when you're fasting, particularly drawn-out fasting, you may not always be able to store a portion of these electrolytes for a long time frame. So assuming you're inadequate, you are aware if it is magnesium or potassium going into a quick, and you are not taking in any food. No electrolytes then, at that point, it's overstated. You can feel woozy, you could drop. So this is the reason when you quick, I suggest, okay, taking electrolytes now that you are familiar with potassium. How about we show you the video that I referenced about consuming sufficient serving of mixed greens? I put it right here. Look at it.